This is Joe narrating a PowerPoint in Social Studies in the unit on economics. It's lesson 2, the U.S. economic system, on page 460 in the Kaplan book. We'll start with a few French words. Our system of economics in the United States is called laissez-faire economics, which means that the uh, owners of businesses can work without too much government interference. This idea came from Adam Smith in the 18th century. He believed that if everyone worked for their own interests, then as a country, the sum total of all their actions will be in the best interests of society. Another French word is entrepreneur, the people who own businesses and build them up. So in laissez-faire economics, anyone can become an entrepreneur. You can seek out training. You can choose a job you want or build a business. You can go to the banks and try to get a loan to start your business. And all these are done without too much government interference compared to other countries. A few definitions mentioned in your book. Capacity is how much product a business can make. This is often limited by resources or inability to hire enough people, or the fact that there may be too many of the product already and no one's buying it. Operations is all the things that a business does, and profit, as most of us know, is just what's left over after you pay your expenses. So it's the revenues, which is the money in, minus the expenses, which is the money out. A few more terms. Monopoly, the word mono, the prefix mono is derived from the word one. It's a single company which controls a whole industry. For example, the Philadelphia Water Company controls the tap water. There's no other option for getting tap water. And the post office in the past was a monopoly. In the last 30 years or so, other companies will do mailings for you, like UPS and FedEx. Sometimes monopolies are carefully regulated by the government so that they can't charge too much, since they could theoretically charge whatever they want because they're the only way you can get that product. An oligopoly, oligo means few. It's where a few companies control a whole industry. For example, in the computer business, there's only a few large companies. Same thing in the automobile business, there are a few large companies. It's very difficult for a person who has an idea to start a car company to get started because of the expenses and the competition from these large auto companies. Another definition is gross domestic product, or GDP. That is the monetary value of all the finished goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific time period. So what we buy for food, housing, cars, that all goes into consumption. Also the money that goes into investment, the money that the government spends, and the difference between exports and imports. Exports are the goods that we ship overseas, and imports are the goods that we ship into our country from other countries. So all these are components of GDP. Over time, GDP tends to go up as we become more efficient in our production mechanisms. The third paragraph on page 460 talks about the business cycle. The blue line here is the business cycle, or the relative productivity of a company or companies. The red line, which is kind of a straight line here, shows the GDP. So over time, GDP tends to go up linearly, which means in a straight line, but superimposed on that linear growth of GDP are fluctuations in how well businesses are doing. So initially, businesses grow, they reach a peak, and then they are often limited at that peak by getting resources, getting employees to work or there might be too much of the product, and then the business starts to slow down. As it starts to slow down, it's called a recession. And then when it reaches its lowest point, it starts to go back up again or recover. If this curve becomes very large where the businesses really go down after the peak, it could be a depression. So recession and depression are two words that you hear often. A recession is a drop in the GDP over 2 or more consecutive quarters. So a quarter is 1/4 of the year. If the GDP growth goes down in 2 consecutive quarters, that's a recession. A recession is an expected part of the business cycle. For example, the housing market goes up, houses are in demand, people start building more houses, and then the market for housing goes down because there's too many houses, or there's fewer people looking to buy houses, or the market has become saturated, meaning there's too much of the product for the people who want them. So that's a normal part of the business cycle. A depression is a longer, deeper recession. It's where there's a 10% drop in economic activity or GDP for 2 or more years. So these are much more rare and not thought of as part of the normal business cycle. Inflation is another word you should know. Inflation can be defined as either you're spending more money for the same amount of product over time, or you're getting fewer goods for the same amount of money. For example, in this picture, compare 20-year intervals, 1972, 1992, and 2012. For $20, you might have been able to fill up your market basket in 1972. You could buy fewer products for that same $20 in 1992, and less even in 2012. That is due to inflation. It's the purchasing power of a dollar goes down over time. The last paragraph talks about banks and savings and loan associations. Basically, if you put your money in a savings account with a bank, the bank accepts your money. It then will loan out that money to businesses. The bank will charge the business an interest rate, and then out of that interest rate they will give you a smaller interest rate for using the money. So the bank makes money by the difference between what the interest rate is for the business and what the interest rate they have to pay you. A stock is another way to make an investment. Basically, when you purchase a stock, you're purchasing a share of the business. So if that business does well, the value of that stock will go up and you will make money. People buy and sell stocks at stock exchanges. There are several large stock exchanges in the United States in different cities. The New York Stock Exchange is one that's often quoted on the news. So at these stock exchanges, a person who thinks that the value of a company is going to go up will purchase a stock. A person who thinks that the value of the company is going to go down will sell the stock. That is it for page 460 in Kaplan.